USA Radio News with Tim Berg.
President Trump is meeting with Pakistan's Prime Minister at the White House on Monday. The two will be discussing numerous topics, including trade, defense, and the war in Afghanistan.
So we're working with Pakistan and others to extricate ourselves, nor do we want to be policemen, because basically we're policemen right now, and we're not supposed to be policemen. We've been there for 19 years in Afghanistan. It's ridiculous. And I think Pakistan helps us with that because we don't want to stay as policemen.
Earlier on Monday, President Trump and the First Lady paid their respects to the late Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens. Stevens died last week at the age of 99 after suffering a stroke. Stevens' body is lying in repose in the Great Hall of the Supreme Court building. And Senate Democrats are rolling out legislation aimed at protecting illegal alien children and families in custody at the U.S. southern border. And you're listening to USA Radio News. Protests are continuing in Puerto Rico today. With more on the story, here's USA Radio Network's Chris Barnes.
Puerto Rico's governor says he will not seek re-election next year after a week of protests and calls for him to step down. Ricardo Rossello says he's going to quit as the head of his new progressive party as well. Protesters have filled the streets of San Juan calling for his resignation over leaked text messages between him and top aides, which ridiculed hurricane victims and other political figures.
Oil prices continue to rise on Monday on concerns that Iran's seizure of a British tanker last week may lead to supply disruptions in the energy-rich Persian Gulf. Security expert Richard Clark tells me we need to be very cautious when dealing with Iran.
The Iranian military and their intelligence people are really good. And they've been hacking not only into other countries in the Middle East, but they've made things happen in the U.S.
USA Radio News. On Sunday's edition of Face the Nation on CBS, House GOP Conference Chair Republican from Wyoming Liz Cheney confronted anchor Margaret Brennan for completely missing the point regarding President Trump's feud with the so-called Squad. Brennan kept saying it was about race. Meanwhile, Cheney says it was about ideas.
I think the news media really wants to make this about race. You just did it. This isn't about race. It's not about gender. It's not about religion. These members of the House of Representatives fundamentally believe in policies that are dangerous for this nation. And as Republicans, we are going to fight against those, even if the mainstream media accuses us of racism when we do that. I know you guys don't want to. You don't want to focus on the fact that there are substantive differences. You also don't want to focus on the... I let you ask me the question. This is about policy, and it is that is not true. The president every single day talks about policy. Every single day this president talks about the tremendous economic growth that we have seen since he's been in office, the tremendous job growth, the tremendous decline in unemployment.
Our country has nothing to do with jobs.
You are making my point. I think the news media, you included, ought to cover the substance, and I think it is outrageous for you to say the president doesn't talk about substance.
One of the other things many people are taking a look at in that interview was if you look at the official CBS transcript, Congresswoman Cheney was interrupted 22 times. Meanwhile, earlier on the show, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California was interrupted 0. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.